impression I get of Cardiff, it's a welcoming cosmopolitan city. There's the whole cross-section of society in a very small space. We're a really big village, but with as a capital city, so very friendly, very welcoming, very cosmopolitan.
Yeah. Do you think should be done by the government to try and change its policy on asylum seekers when they have a liminal case that they don't know what to do about?
I think we need some clarity and some speed of decision. We've got a lot of issues regarding asylum, which is not the fault of the asylum seeker. We have thousands and thousands of people who, for genuine reasons, have to flee their country. I think we owe it to them to make sure that we have systems in place, that we have decisions which are made speedily so that they can get on with their lives, because the worst thing is having somebody in limbo, not knowing from day to day whether their case is going to be determined, whether they're going to have to go back to the country which they've been fleeing from. What they want to do is to settle down and to contribute to society, and the best way to do that is by people working. So I think we owe it to them, we owe it to them to make sure that we make a decision as quickly as we can.
Do you think should be done by the government to try and change its policy on asylum seekers when they have a liminal case that they don't know what to do about?
I think we need some clarity and some speed of decision. We've got a lot of issues regarding asylum, which is not the fault of the asylum seeker. We have thousands and thousands of people who, for genuine reasons, have to flee their country. I think we owe it to them to make sure that we have systems in place, that we have decisions which are made speedily so that they can get on with their lives, because the worst thing is having somebody in limbo, not knowing from day to day whether their case is going to be determined, whether they're going to have to go back to the country which they've been fleeing from. What they want to do is to settle down and to contribute to society, and the best way to do that is by people working. So I think we owe it to them, we owe it to them to make sure that we make a decision as quickly as we can.
And on the sort of major fear of the British people, a lot of people are very scared that if the British government sort of changes the laws and allows cases that are really needy to stay here and get that decision process making faster, they're scared that there'll be a massive increase in immigrant numbers. So what would you sort of say to them if you held the decision to allay those fears?
Living in a city like Cardiff, which has over the years has a lot of influx of people from many different foreign lands through coming through, not asylum seekers but people who come and settled here. We're a very cosmopolitan city, and the majority of the people in Cardiff know that communities can work together quite successfully. If there is a numbers issue, we need to make sure that we have the procedures in place so that genuine asylum seekers are dealt with as a priority. I'm sure we can do that. We can have a system in place whereas people who qualify because they are fleeing their country because they're fearful of their life or their family's life, then I'm sure we can deal with those quickly. We are a fair nation, and most people, when you speak to them and you say to them, would you like to be, what would you expect of someone else if you were in a similar situation?
Yeah.
Most people, when you put that to them, will think, well, actually, you're right, we owe it to these people.
The first question is just, what do you think the government could do to simplify the system that asylum seekers who are caught in limbo find themselves in?
I think the key problem is the government has got the most massive backlog of cases, and unless they sort that backlog, then they are muddling on from year to year. And the longer cases go on, in many circumstances, the more complex they get.
Yeah.
One of the things that worries me a great deal is a very high percentage of appeals against decisions that are successful.
Yes.
And that indicates to me that the original decisions are very faulty indeed. If so many appeals succeed, there's something wrong with the initial decision making.
Yeah.
And yet it's not being done too hastily.
Yeah.
It takes far too long.
Yeah. And what is the specific reason that you think it takes far too long? Is it simply the procedure they have in place, or is it that they're stuck in a catch-22 situation?
I think Tony Blair admitted it a few weeks ago when he said the government had got immigration wrong back in about 2002.
Yeah.
I think they had a flood of people coming into the country and they were not geared up to it, and rather than just putting the resources into it. They let the queue develop and develop and develop. And it is a catch-22 situation, because very often they are making life for the people who are here waiting for a decision very difficult indeed if they are eventually refused. Because I personally have dealt with cases who have people who are married here, people who have children here. I dealt with one young man who came as a juvenile, an unaccompanied minor. He said that 7 years later, when the decision eventually came, he had no relatives left back in his home country.
Yeah.
And he had grown up in Britain, got British qualifications, and felt British. So it was very difficult indeed for him, that decision about going home. And in fact, as I lost contact with him, which suggests to me he just disappeared, as so many people do. I think once a decision's made, once a final appeal has been heard, and if it's lost, I think then the government needs to put in place proper support for a short period of time before people are sent home.
Yeah.
Because they should either be allowed to stay here or they should be sent home.
Yeah.
They shouldn't be sent into some sort of limbo which leaves them absolutely destitute. That there are dozens of asylum seekers in Cardiff at this moment,
Yes.
who would not survive if it were not for the support of the churches in Cardiff, the support of relatives in Cardiff and friends in Cardiff.
Yeah.
And that is an unreasonable way, an inhumane way of the government to behave.
Yeah.
It would be reasonable if people were allowed to work.
Yeah.
I know so many asylum seekers who would love to work.
Yeah.
Many of them got high-level qualifications, could contribute to our society,
Yeah.
but they are left sponging off friends, relatives and charities when they don't want to be.
I think that the last thing on the issue is also the role that Tony Blair set up, which was, in the 1990s, which was that the councils became service facilitators rather than service providers, taking that power away and getting them to organise it. So even for those who have Section 4 support, there's the company that runs it is called ClearSpring. Now, I'm sure they do the best with the money that they have allocated to them to do this, but in this case, as pressure grows on the system, continuously, getting worse. So, more pressure with less money to deal with it. So, I don't know what the solution is for trying to deal with that issue.
The cynic in me would suggest that the government has woken up in the last 10 years to the fact that a very large number of asylum seekers has caused concern in some of the poorer sections of our long-standing native British community, and that this has led to a popularity of the far-right parties, for example, and the government is now worried. And I would say that they are deliberately reducing the amount of money per person that they are offering or able to provide in order to discourage people from coming to Britain.
Yeah.
But the truth of the matter is that English is a world language, and very many people speak English, at least a little bit of it, before they come here, and they want to come to Britain because that's where we speak English. And I mean, the government really needs to decide that to make its borders much more secure, make sure that fewer people come in illegally, and make a very much smoother, swifter system for those